There is a rule the universe almost never breaks. No star, no light. No light, no life. NOCTHYRA never got the rule. Somewhere, a long time ago, this planet was torn loose from its sun and thrown into the dark between stars. It should be a frozen tomb. Right now, this second, it is drifting through open space with no morning, no noon, no sky it will ever get back. And it is covered in fire. Not one fire, thousands. Rivers of molten rock glowing up out of cracks that run for hundreds of miles across the ice. Cities built along the edges of them, hanging over the heat like hands held toward a stove. And people, looking up at us with eyes that catch our lights and shine back the way a cat's do in a dark room. A whole world with no sun, and every single thing on it is alive. How? And why is a planet this far from any star building something that points straight up into the black and waiting for an answer? Human science has one rule for where life can happen, and it starts with a star. We landed on a world that tears that rule in half. This is what we found on NOCTHYRA, and we are still trying to understand it. We came down at the edge of one of the great cracks. The crew took to calling them the Emberlines, long wounds in the crust, glowing orange from somewhere deep, throwing off enough heat to melt the frost for a mile on either side. The first thing you notice is that it's warm. That shouldn't be possible. Out here, with no sun, the surface should sit near 270 degrees below zero, cold enough to freeze the air itself into snow. But Okafor read the numbers off her wrist twice before she believed them, and then she just laughed, quiet, the way you laugh when something breaks your idea of how things work. The planet was heating itself. Down in the core, the same slow fire that keeps the inside of the Earth molten had never gone out. And the sky helped. The atmosphere here is thick, heavy with hydrogen, a blanket so dense it won't let the warmth escape. There's a name for a world like this, from an old paper written back on Earth long before anyone ever saw one. They called it a Steppenwolf, a planet like a lone wolf, wandering the dark on its own, kept alive by nothing but its own heat and the weight of its own sky. We always thought that was a thought experiment. We were standing on one. And NOCTHYRA is not a freak. Out in the dark between the stars, drifting with no sun, there are billions of worlds like it. More loose planets in our galaxy, by some counts, than there are stars. We just never think about them because they don't shine. An entire population of planets, most of them frozen dead, and every so often one keeps its fire and does this. Here is the part that's hard to hold in your head. The temperature of this planet, measured from space, is about 30 degrees above absolute zero, colder than anything you have ever touched. And yet down along the Emberlines, there is running water and warm stone and things growing. Because life doesn't actually need a sun, it needs energy. A sun is just the easy way to get it. On Earth, miles under the ocean where no light has ever reached, there are whole gardens of living things clustered around cracks in the seafloor, feeding on chemicals and heat pouring up from below. No sunlight, no plants, no day. They have been down there, in the dark, the entire time. NOCTHYRA took that little exception to the rule and built a planet out of it. We walked in along a bridge of black stone, thrown across a canyon of fire. Below us, the heat. Above us, the sky. And what a sky! With no sun to wash it out, the dark up there is the deepest we have ever seen, and it is packed, edge to edge, with stars. The whole band of the galaxy lies across it like spilled light, and sometimes, low over the ice, a curtain of green and violet ripples and folds. An aurora, the same cold fire you'd see over the poles of Earth, burning quietly above a world that hasn't seen a sunrise in 1,000,000 years. Vance stood there, looking up, and said, almost to himself, that it was the most beautiful place he'd ever been afraid of. None of us asked him why he was afraid. Not yet. The people found us before we found them. They live in the walls of the canyons, homes and workshops and stairways cut straight into the rock, stacked up the sides of the heat. Closer to the warmth, the poorer you are. Higher toward the cold, the higher you're standing. They are tall and pale and built for the dark. Their eyes are huge and they throw back the light. So when a crowd of them gathered at the far end of the bridge to watch us, what we saw first was a field of shining points hanging in the black, all turned toward the strangers with the lamps on their shoulders. Because that was what we were to them. We came from a world with a sun. We carried light on our backs like it was nothing. Okafor tried to explain later what it must mean to a people who have never once in their history seen a star rise, to watch 4 small figures walk out of the dark wearing daylight. They fed us. They showed us the groves. Down in the middle levels of the canyon, where the heat is gentle, they grow forests that make their own light. Pale stalks and soft blue caps glowing just enough to pick fruit by. On Earth, most of the animals in the deep ocean can do this, make their own light out of their own bodies. About 3 out of every 4. Here, it isn't a trick. It's the whole economy. They farm light the way we farm wheat. And out on the dark ice beyond the cities, we watch something none of us will forget. A herd. Thousands of animals, each one glowing a soft blue along its flanks, moving in a long, slow river across the frost, following the aurora overhead like it was a road. Sato said it looked like the sky had come down to walk around. They have no word for morning. We tried to explain it, the idea that light comes up over the edge of the world on its own, every day, for free. An old woman in the grove listened and shook her head and gave us a word back that Okafor spent an hour turning over. It meant, as close as we could get it, the promise that was broken. That's what light is here, not a fact, a promise something made and didn't keep. But here's the paradox. For a world with no sun, NOCTHYRA is full of light. So why did every warm, living, glowing part of it feel like it was holding its breath? We started to notice it in the shrines. There were 2 kinds. Down by the fire, in every home and forge, small, warm altars. A flame kept burning, tended, fed. The oldest faith on the planet. Heat is life. Guard the fire. Don't disturb the dark. But up high, near the cold, there was another kind. Older stone, different marks. And these ones didn't face the fire at all. They faced straight up at one particular patch of the sky. We asked what was up there, and that was the first time we saw these gentle people go quiet and hard at the same time. It took us a while to understand what we had walked into the middle of. This civilization is split in 2, not by land or blood or money, by a single question they have been fighting over for longer than they can remember. Because they have a memory, passed down, carved, argued over, that NOCTHYRA was not always like this. That once, a very long time ago, there was a sun, and that something took it, threw their world into the dark on purpose, and left. One of the sky watchers, old, careful, the keeper of the highest shrine, took Sato by the wrist and walked her along a wall of carvings we were never meant to see. It told the whole thing in pictures worn soft by 1,000 years of hands. A sun in the sky, a shape coming down out of it, and then the sun, gone, and a line of people walking up into the dark after the shape, leaving the rest behind. The keeper pointed at the ones left behind, then at herself, then at us. She wasn't asking us to explain it. She was asking us to take her with us when we left. One side, most of them, the firekeepers, believed that thing was the end of the world, and only barely not the end of them. Their whole faith is, survive, hold on to the fire, never ever call up into that sky again, or it will notice, and it will come back to finish what it started. The other side believes something harder to live with, that the thing didn't destroy them, that it took them somewhere, into the light, and that the ones left in the dark were the ones who got left behind. And that side has been building something. They call it the beacon. It rises out of the highest, coldest ridge on the planet, a tower of stone and metal and patience, generations in the making, pointed at that one starless patch of sky. It is almost finished. For 1,000 years, the sky watchers have been building a voice loud enough to call the thing that put out their sun and ask it to come back, to take them the way it took the others, to bring back the light. And the firekeepers have spent those same 1,000 years trying to stop them, because to them, finishing the beacon isn't hope. It's ringing a dinner bell in a dark forest. We should have stayed out of it, but we couldn't have, even if we'd tried. Because the moment both sides understood where we came from, we stopped being visitors. We became proof. To the sky watchers, we were everything they'd promised for 1,000 years, living evidence that out there, past the dark, the light is real, and people live in it, and it is worth calling for. To the firekeepers, we were the worst thing that had ever happened. Strangers who fell out of that exact patch of sky, the disaster arriving. The thing they'd warned about, standing on their bridge with the sky on our shoulders. The crowd that had come to marvel at us started to divide while we stood in it. Reyes got us moving before it turned, one hand out, low and slow, the way you back away from something you don't want to startle. We didn't run. You can't outrun a crowd that thinks you're either a god or the end of the world. We just kept talking and kept moving and let them argue about us instead of grabbing us. The sky watchers walked us up toward the beacon to keep us safe, or to use us, probably both. And on the way, Vance finally said the thing he'd been afraid of since the first night. He'd been watching the Emberlines. Some of them were dimming. Down the slope from us, in a canyon that should have been glowing, there was a city gone completely dark. We went in. It was perfect. Homes, bridges, workshops, all still standing, and all of it frozen solid, silent. The fire underneath it burned out for good. Everyone long gone. In one of the houses, Okafor found a warm altar, one of the little fire shrines every home keeps. The flame in it had been out so long the stone was cold all the way through. Somebody tended that fire every day of their life, the way their family had for 100 generations, right up until there was no more heat coming up from below to keep it lit. Guard the fire. That's the whole faith. They did. It wasn't enough. That's the other clock nobody up here talks about. The heat that keeps this whole world alive is slowly running down. Emberline by emberline, century by century, the fire is going out. Which means the Skywatchers aren't just praying, they're racing. Get the beacon finished, get someone to answer, get off this dying rock before the last fire goes cold and NOCTHYRA becomes exactly what it looks like from space. A tomb that got a little extra time. Sato was the one who found the marks deep in the base of the beacon. Symbols cut into the oldest stone, worn almost smooth. She went still when she saw them, because we'd seen that hand before. The same strange lines were carved into a temple wall on a desert world we'd walked away from, cut into the bones of a dead giant on another, running along a machine that never stopped building on a third, glowing on the dome of an empty city on a fourth. The same maker. At every world we have ever set foot on, something came before us. And here it was again, except this time the people didn't fear it and didn't worship it from a distance. Here they were calling it, on purpose, by name. Okafor said what all of us were thinking, and her voice was very quiet. Everywhere else, we found what it left behind. Here, we found someone reaching out to bring it back. It came to a head at the foot of the beacon. The firekeepers had come up out of the warm dark in numbers we hadn't seen, come to tear the thing down before it could be finished, or die trying. The Skywatcher stood between them and the tower, and in the middle of it, 4 of us, from the world with a sun, being pulled in both directions at once, the proof that the light was real, the proof the disaster had come. A whole civilization come to the edge of a 1,000-year argument, all at the same moment. And before a single one of them could decide, the sky answered. The aurora, that soft green curtain that had drifted over us all this time, pulled tight. All of it, the whole sky, bending toward that one starless patch overhead. And out of the dark up there, out of the one place with no stars in it, a single point of light appeared, steady, patient, getting brighter, pointed right back down the same line 4 other worlds had pointed us along. Everyone stopped. The firekeepers, the Skywatchers, all of them. A whole planet that had been screaming at itself a second before went completely silent. Faces turned up, lit for the first time in 1,000,000 years by something in the sky that wasn't a star. The thing they had argued about for 1,000 years just became real, and not one of them was ready. We didn't stay to see what came down. I want to be honest about that. We ran. Because on every world before this one, we found the trace of something old that had passed through and moved on. This was the first time we watched someone call it and get an answer. And this is the thing I haven't been able to put down since. A civilization, alone in the dark, so desperate to be found that it built a voice 1,000 years long and aimed it at the one thing that had already heard it once. We have a planet that does the same thing. For 100 years, Earth has been leaking its voice into that same dark. Radio, television, our own small signals, climbing out past the edge of everything, in every direction. We call it listening for company. Standing on NOCTHYRA, watching a whole world go silent under a light that finally answered, I'm not sure that's what it is. We left NOCTHYRA behind, but it did not leave us. Somewhere ahead, another world is waiting, and the Aurelia is already moving toward it, along the same line NOCTHYRA was calling down. Which means, one way or another, We're about to find out which end of that signal it answers first. If you want to travel with us aboard the Aurelia, subscribe. A new world every week.